Welcome to Saturday versus Sunday. I'm Jeff Dover. With me is John Barban. Let's talk football.
Yeah, we're going to do Monday night reaction to the Chargers Cardinals game. Barely anything to say there. It was just a slog. And we'll spend more time on the Ravens Buccaneers game, and partly good for the Ravens and a lot of bad for the Bucs. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's but what would be a lot of good is if you hit like and subscribe the video, subscribe the channel. We'd appreciate your support.
No, that would be great. Yes, we would appreciate that.
All right, so what's your big takeaway from the Ravens Bucks game?
Well, two injuries. The big takeaway is injuries are really starting to affect the NFL season.
Yeah.
The Bucs on our locks for this week for the NFL, I had the over in the Bucs game. Now I'm glad I haven't placed the bet yet, because now I'm going to take the under. Now that Godwin and Evans are both out, that's the main firepower on that team.
Yeah.
And I know the score at the Monday night game, they have 31 points, but a lot of that was just garbage time. It didn't matter. Those two guys, the most productive players on the offense. There's just nothing. I can't imagine whoever's backing them up is going to be anywhere near that productive. As far as it's bad, it's really bad. The Bucs were looking good. Mayfield looks like he belongs there.
Yep.
The connection with Godwin and Evans, everything was clicking. You know, maybe they weren't going to beat the Ravens regardless. I mean, that is a powerful team, but they're a legitimate NFC playoff team. We saw that last year, and they were looking even better this year. And now I think the season's all but done, missing those two guys. And we're not talking about just any starters. We're talking about really good starting receivers.
Yeah, Evans is one of the best receivers in the last 5 years or whatever. If you add up all the total yardage and everything. And that's the danger of coming back early from a hamstring strain. Not saying he came back early, but if you're not 100% after a hamstring strain, that's the prime muscle you use for sprinting. And you could see it exactly what happened. The ball was out in front. He had to kick it into a little bit of an extra gear, like to get there. And then immediately, like that could be really bad. So he's going to be out for a long time, which really sucks. And then what did you think that I was surprised how late in the game Godwin got injured and that they were still playing the starters? I mean, again, it ended with they were within 10 points, but did you feel like did that hit your radar at all, that he got injured at a time where like maybe he didn't even have to be on the field?
You think about it after the fact, but when it was happening, it seemed kind of pointless, given we've seen many games this year where the starters are out with 10, 12 minutes left. That's happened multiple times in the NFL.
Yes.
In this game, as far behind as they were, again, hindsight's 2020. It just seemed kind of desperate you're not coming back. There just was no coming back from that deficit. So I don't know. That hindsight's 2020. Who knows?
Yeah.
But just back to the Evans.
It just doesn't sit well when it's like 2 minutes to go and one of the key receivers goes out like with a fracture that, and it was anyway. So that was just, and you're right. I don't know if you pulled him with 3 minutes to go, they'd be like, hey, we still got a chance here. Like that wouldn't have looked good either. But man, it just sits extra hard where it's, the game was essentially over and it was 2 minutes to go and you lose one of your best receivers.
Yeah, no, that was pretty awful. On the Evans thing, I guess really mostly we're going to focus on the two injuries. Obviously, the Ravens look powerful as hell. And Jackson had another amazing game, like 5 touchdowns. The one thing about him, I don't see how the Ravens lose. Seeing how they're playing now, I'm amazed they lost 2 games already this year. They just don't look like, I don't understand how you beat them.
You're always like this. You're always worried that the Kansas City is going to be so dominant that there's no one else out there. And then you start today with like, I don't think anyone can beat Baltimore. Like what's the
I know, but Kansas City already has. I just don't understand how.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess it was a close game, but
my take on it is that their offense is clicking and the defense is one of the worst Baltimore defenses I've seen in a while. Not saying that it's bad, but they've usually been lockdown defenses, and they're not now. They're still good, but it's not as dominant as it used to be. But my takeaway from that with Baltimore's offense specifically is that you don't want Baltimore to go ahead and then rely on Derrick Henry as if you're the opposing team, because that is a bad recipe. Like if they get a lead, and then the only way to stop them is stopping Derrick Henry, like with rest, that's a impossible situation. So that, to me, to your point, if Baltimore goes up, I don't know how they lose a game if they lose that game, because they're just going to run with Henry, and it was, he looked amazing, especially in the fourth quarter.
Oh yeah, did he ever? Well, all right. Well, so Baltimore looks strong. Maybe they are the hope here. I mean, they did play the Chiefs close in the AFC. They're clearly look like the other best team in the NFL after the Chiefs. Even
Yeah.
though they keep losing to the Chiefs, they do look like maybe they're putting it together. Maybe that early game against the Chiefs, they didn't quite know how to use Henry or hadn't sorted the playbook out yet with him. But as of right now, I mean, the Chiefs look shaky in every game, even though the Chiefs win every game. They look, how about this? The Chiefs look gettable in all of their games, even though they end up winning. The Ravens don't look gettable. It just looks like inevitably you're just going to lose.
Yeah, Lamar Jackson, this is the best version of Lamar Jackson. He was 17 for 22 for 281 yards, 5 TDs, and he also rushed for 50 yards. So like that's feels like an unstoppable opponent, you know.
Yeah,
and then Derrick Henry had 169 yards on 15 carries. So
and Lamar looks good throwing it to all levels of the defense, deep, intermediate, short. He doesn't put the ball in harm's way. Go ahead.
You know, and that to your point, that's I think you're exactly right. He can throw it to all 3 levels, and that's what was missing, I think, earlier in the season. Like Bateman looked really good this game. The tight end Andrews looked really good this game, and they didn't earlier on. Like you know what I mean? So
well, and now they have 2 tight ends. Likely is nice too.
Yes, exactly.
He's not at Andrews' level, but boy, is he. This team's just got firepower.
Yeah, that's the immersion of the number of weapons they have now, I think, is what's made the difference.
Yeah. Well, I mean they're the hope in the AFC, and unless the Bengals can get their act together, the Ravens is the only hope in the AFC to challenge the status quo.
What it feels like today.
Yep. What it feels like today. All right, so then I guess we'll finish off super quickly on the Chargers game. I mean, that was awful. I mean, it was an unwatchable game. Go ahead.
You really only needed to watch the fourth quarter, because that was Kyler Murray had a great run. The Chargers were up by 1, and then Arizona hit a field goal. No time left to win. So like that was good, but like boy, the first 3 quarters were a bit of a slog.
And I know people have complained about that controversial call on the roughing, the unnecessary roughness hit on Harrison, which wasn't a hit at all. The NFL has to start
on Harrison or Herbert. Who are you talking about?
Marvin Harrison.
Oh yeah,
there was a hit that got them 15 yards, and it was. I mean, there's no you can't say what would have happened on the next play anyways, but it did just give them some yards, and it was just a normal. He dropped a pass that he should have caught, and both defenders converged on him. And I can't even see what would happen there. I guess they thought maybe there was some sort of contact to his helmet, but it was nothing. It was just a glancing hit. He just popped right up. There's a problem with the NFL referees being overly cautious with any kind of hit. And I just couldn't believe. I know some people think, well, that was the game was blown on that. And I don't know. You really think the Chargers were in any position to win that game? They looked terrible. So their offense was awful. And it was funny, as I was watching that game at the beginning, the announcers are talking about Harbaugh wants to run the ball. This is a smash mouth team. They had 50 yards. Pathetic. Just pathetic. And then Herbert threw for, 350 or something like that.
Yes. Yeah.
And that was an example of, it doesn't matter how many yards you throw for. If you can't run, you're in trouble. Especially in like the modern NFL.
That's a really good point.
You really have to run.
Yeah, we've talked about on previous episodes. You can't be one-dimensional in the NFL, and so and even though Herbert is really successful passing the ball, it's just not going to win you the game, because the defense only has to defend one thing. So it's pretty crazy that the Chargers had the ball for 34 minutes and the Arizona just had it for 25. And Arizona won, but we've said this before. This is a personnel game. And even though Kyler Murray didn't have a great game, he was really great when he needed to be. Kind of like what we said about Mahomes before, and he broke a big run and put him in a position, a 7-play drive to have a field goal with no time left. So that was the difference. So
and that was an awful game to watch. It's just not entertaining at all. Yeah. And it was and then it was interesting as the announcers realized, the Chargers can't run. Then they had to change the tune, saying, well, obviously he can't do what he wants to do. So now we're down to, resting it on Herbert's arm, which you'd think would be a terrible strategy given he's really good. But 350 yards later, it just didn't matter. I mean,
Yeah.
what did they end up with? 15 points? That's pathetic.
Yeah, that's a
Just-
good. I guess that's the definition of a bend but don't break defense, right? Because they had a decent number of yards on
Mm.
offense, other than the rushing part, right? Like they ended up with 395 yards, although 350 of it was passing. But they didn't give up a lot of touchdowns.
Well, and they had one huge play where the receiver fumbled it on like the 5 maybe, and it was a touchback. So that negated 70 yards worth of offense that could have been a touchdown. It ended up being nothing. So, I mean, you got to hold on to the ball. It's the most fundamental thing. You just don't drop the ball. It's just, if you drop the ball, it just doesn't matter. None of your scheme matters if you actually can't hold on to the ball. Anyways,
no, exactly.
just
It's
ugly
very true.
football. All right. Well, I guess the last item is the Godwin injury. How bad is that? It looked bad.
It was bad. It was I think they said at first it was a dislocated ankle, but then I think he does have a fracture too. The tibia and the fibula, I thought. Like, am I getting that correctly?
No, somebody else actually broke it. There's another tibia fibula break.
And I don't want to say something incorrect then, but it was because I think it was the ankle fracture originally, and it was it's bad. It's the talus is one of the bones in the lower part of the ankle. It's actually one of the few bones in the body that doesn't have a muscle attachment. And so it's just held in place by ligaments. And so if that's dislocated, it could be pretty significant. And you have to be non-weight bearing for a fair bit of time as part of the rehab, which then really prolongs the rehab because it takes longer to get the strength back in the legs and with the atrophy and stuff. So it's not good. They have those splints are super cool. Not everyone realizes this. The one that they put them on in the field, it looks like they're pumping it full of air. Like an air splint around the leg on the field, but it's actually a bag filled with beads, and they're sucking the air out so that it becomes hard on the outside, but it doesn't compress the leg, which is super cool. Because if you just pumped it full of air, it would compress the injury, which would make it really painful. But it's actually sucks the air out, and it just becomes a hard shell around it. So it's the best way to stabilize something that quickly,
like an immediate cast with no compression.
Exactly.
Wow, that's super cool.
Yeah, and it's with beads, so it completely conforms to the actual the leg and the injury and the swelling, like in live time. So
and as horrific as that injury is, and how long that's going to take, Evans' hamstrings are going to take a while. Hamstrings are really finicky. Do we know exactly why hamstrings are so hard to heal?
Oh, that's how much time do you have, John? You could be here for what? No, that is so okay. So soccer is actually arguably the most popular sport in the world. They call it football in Europe. And hamstring strains are one of the biggest problems they have there. So in terms of pure researchers looking at injuries, ACL is probably one of the more common ones because they're so significant, but hamstring is right there. There's people looking at why does it happen? Why are they reoccurring? Like, how do you prevent it? They're trying to develop some prevention programs and stuff now. But the bottom line is that it just has to do a lot. It's a muscle that crosses two joints. It has to be an isometric contraction and an eccentric contraction and a constant. So it has to be lengthening as it's trying to contract. It has to shorten while it has to contract. Well, sometimes at the same time, the different parts of the muscle. And it's and it's the prime mover for running. So it's if there's anything wrong with it, like, it's going to be a problem. And so that's why it takes so long for someone to come back from it, because it has to be 100%. Otherwise it can tear again. So, and that's what's really bad about re-injuries, is that if you have a slight tear in it and then you tear it again, you're going to miss more time now the second time than you would have the first, right? So he's
been so durable. What did they say? 9 games in 10 years. That's all he's missed.
He's extremely durable. So that's not a good sign. And and that's just with a straight muscle tear. Sometimes it can tear off the bone, in which case you need surgery to like reattach it and stuff. So there's all kinds of things that can happen with that.
Yeah. Anytime I see a player pull up and grab their hamstring, I'm like, oh no, not only is he not going to be right for the rest of the season, that could be something that just keeps going. I've had a hamstring that's been tweaked for, I don't know, 8 years now. And I don't know. All the therapy, I've done PRP injections. It's really hard to get those things back in shape no matter what you do. And it's not like I'm running around doing anything. It's just a couple of bad reps in the gym, and it's just bad.
It's just be thankful you don't get paid to catch touchdowns, because that would really put a damper in your economy.
Oh, I know. All right. Well, I think that's all I got for Monday night. Do you
Yeah,
have
me
anything
too.
else? It's just a real bummer that both of those guys are out. That just puts all kinds of shade on the Bucs season. But the
The
Ravens look really good.
Yeah, the best part about Monday night was that there was two games, and so when one wasn't that great, the other one was. So
Yeah, there you
good
go.
on the NFL.
All right. Well, stick around. We've got our NCAA week. Are we 9? Yeah. Week
Yes,
9.
you,
Week 9 locks of the year of the week. So you got to check that out.
you
Stay
love
tuned.
that.